So there are many different operating systems, some better, some worse in my opinion, but most people have the main three operating systems of Linux, Windows, or Mac OS. Now, amongst these operating systems, Windows is definitely the most used operating system by far worldwide, but Linux is also quite popularly used. Now, there's a big difference between Windows and Linux, and one of these big differences is of course the fact that Linux has many different versions, or as a lot of people like to call them, flavors of Linux, and that's mainly due to the fact that Windows is a corporately run OS, while Linux is a mostly community-based or community-run OS. Now, why am I even talking about this? Well, it's because Linux has many different kinds of flavors. And for the people who want to try out Linux or even permanently make it their OS, they might not know which flavor of Linux to use. But today, I'm here to express my opinion on, at least in my opinion, which Linux flavor / version or distribution, as it's called more appropriately, is the best. And in my opinion, the best overall distribution of Linux is Linux Mint. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but I'll share with you guys my main top reasons why I think that this is the best distribution of Linux out there. So without further ado, let's get started with the very first reason why, and that is that the bloatware on the OS is much less frequent. The amount of bloatware on this distribution is a lot smaller than compared to, let's say, Ubuntu or other similar distributions. Now, why is this so important? Well, depending on how much bloatware you have on your operating system or distribution, that can also greatly affect your performance as well. And if you have way too much unnecessary bloatware, which leaves a lot of power from your system / hardware to be used on the bloatware side of things instead of being used on other more important sides or other more important aspects of your operating system, which can definitely greatly hit your performance. Now, with Linux Mint, this isn't really that big of an issue because it does not come with that much bloatware, and it's really simple to delete or install any apps that you like or don't like or anything similar. The second reason why I think that Linux Mint is the best Linux distribution is because it's simple for new users to grasp. Linux Mint is among one of, if not the most simple and the most easy distributions of Linux to grasp for new people who want to try out Linux or are trying out Linux for the first time. And always when somebody would ask me which distribution to choose or anything similar, I always say Linux Mint, because while you could go with Ubuntu just goes that little step higher and it has a much more different UI compared to Windows. Linux Mint, well, yes, it doesn't have the completely same UI, it does have quite a recognizable and quite similar UI to Windows, and it is quite a lot more simple for totally new users or for new users to use. Now, the third reason why I think Linux Mint is the best Linux distribution is because of the fact that it has very good driver support. Now, don't get me wrong, Ubuntu also has great driver support, but compared to Linux Mint, at least in my opinion, Linux Mint has the better hardware and driver support. Almost all of the systems that I've tried to run Linux Mint on, it has run on perfectly and just fine. And I think a big reason for this is the Linux driver installer. Now, while we're at the hardware and support and driver side of things, another reason or another point why Linux Mint, at least in my opinion, is the best Linux distribution, the overall requirements to run Linux Mint are quite a lot lower than Ubuntu. And and you might be thinking, oh, but doesn't that mean that Linux Mint will have less features or it will be worse or just anything similar really? Well, no, it actually has almost all of the features that Ubuntu has, and it actually has some extra features and also some features that are better, at least in my opinion, than on Ubuntu. And so that was my final main big point as to why Linux Mint is, at least in my opinion, the best Linux distribution for any user. Now, a lot of people might say, oh, but why did you compare it only to Ubuntu? Why didn't you use other distributions as examples as well? It's because Ubuntu just came to my head, and also it's because of the fact that Ubuntu is most of the time compared to Linux Mint, same with the other way around as well. But before this video ends off, just like I've been mentioning across this entire video, like a lot of times already, I want to point out that of course this is all my opinion, and you guys are completely free to have your own opinions which are different to mine, and I'd love to see or hear your opinions in the comments down below.